Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into the absolutely fascinating and honestly deeply paradoxical life of Francesco Forgione, a man the world came to know as Padre Pio. Whether you're a dedicated follower of Catholic history or just someone who's super curious about figures who leave this massive, unexplainable mark on the world, his story is going to captivate you. So let's just jump right in and unpack the life of a man whose daily reality literally defied human logic. I mean, think about this for a second. How does a man who sleeps for under 2 hours a night and eats roughly 1 single ounce of food a day inspire millions of people across the globe? It's a staggering physical contradiction. On the one hand, you've got a guy running on virtually zero earthly fuel, and on the other, an individual generating a massive global and historical impact. To figure out how this is even remotely possible, we've got to look at where it all began. So looking at his early days as the mystic of Pietrelcina, long before he was a global phenomenon, Francesco was born into a deeply religious farming family in Italy, and he actually consecrated himself to Jesus when he was just 5 years old. Now, you really can't talk about Padre Pio without talking about the phenomenon that made him famous, and that is the stigmata, which is the supernatural appearance of the bodily wounds of Christ on a person. After becoming a Capuchin priest in 1910, he experienced these wounds for the very first time. They faded for a bit, but then returned permanently in September 1918 while he was praying after Mass. He literally bore these physical wounds on his hands, feet, and side for the next 50 years. Now, you might assume someone experiencing something like this would immediately tell the world, right? But his actual reaction was the exact opposite. He told his spiritual advisor, "I do want to suffer, even to die of suffering, but all in secret." When the stigmata first appeared, the sight absolutely terrified him. He felt this profound embarrassment and practically begged for the outward signs to be taken away. He just deeply, deeply wanted to keep this supernatural aspect of his life completely off the radar. But as you can probably guess, a secret of that magnitude doesn't stay hidden for long, which brings us to the ensuing Vatican controversy. Because as the crowds around him grew, so did the dramatic tension between Padre Pio and church authorities. And the skepticism he faced was intense. Back in 1922, the Holy Office actually stepped in and began restricting public access to him. Then, from 1924 all the way to 1931, the Holy See put out multiple statements explicitly denying that his phenomena were supernatural at all. This pushback really peaked in 1931 when he was ordered to desist from all public activities, meaning he could only celebrate Mass in absolute private. And the wild part? He didn't complain. He just obeyed. It wasn't until 1934 that Pope Pius XI progressively restored his ability to perform public Mass and hear confessions. All right, let's talk about his life of strict discipline. Because to truly grasp who this man was, we have to look way past the supernatural headlines and examine the incredibly grueling, grounding reality of his everyday Capuchin life. Just map this morning's schedule out in your head for a second. He's up at 3 a.m. sharp to pray. By 5 a.m., he's celebrating Mass, which could last anywhere from an hour and a half to 3 hours. After that, he spends his entire morning hearing confessions, and it was said he would actually read the consciences of the people in his confessional. Then finally, lunch is at noon. The sheer physical and spiritual stamina required just to make it to midday is honestly overwhelming. And let's look at the second half of his day, which just builds on that exhaustion. After a really brief afternoon break, he's back into private prayer for 2 solid hours. Mid-afternoon, back in the confessional. By sundown, he's out blessing the crowds. And then, deep into the night, while the rest of his community is fast asleep, he'd be reading the Bible until 12:45 a.m. His life was this continuous, almost unbreakable loop of service, study, and basically zero rest. So the really crucial point here is this staggering juxtaposition. On the output side, the man is hearing confessions for up to 10 hours a day, and he founds a massive hospital, the House for the Relief of Suffering, that serves 60,000 people a year. But on the fuel side, he's sleeping less than 2 hours a night, and by 1950, he was documented as eating only about 1 ounce of food a day. It physically does not make sense. How on earth did he survive this grind? Well, for Padre Pio, the answer to his survival wasn't physical at all. It was entirely spiritual. And that brings us to his profound devotion to the Virgin Mary. His spiritual anchor was the Mary, Our Help devotion. Padre Pio genuinely believed that walking closely with the Blessed Mother was the only true path. He famously said that we should endeavor to walk always close to her, not following any other path that leads to life. She was his ultimate source of comfort and spiritual sustenance, especially when his physical body was failing him. And this devotion definitely wasn't casual. He practiced a really rigorous First Saturday consecration prayer every single month, making some very intense core promises. He pledged to consecrate his very being, body, heart, and soul. He pledged to strictly keep the commandments, prioritize Holy Communion, and devote himself completely and wholeheartedly to her service. It's just a huge testament to his total willing spiritual submission. Finally, let's explore his focus on humility, modesty, and grace. Because beyond all the miracles and the stigmata, Padre Pio left behind a really deep philosophical framework. A foundational piece of his worldview was rooted right in Scripture, specifically this passage from 1 Timothy. It speaks to dressing modestly, with decency, adorning oneself not with gold or expensive clothes, but with good deeds. Now, for Padre Pio, this was never about shame. It was about recognizing that the human body is a temple. It's meant to reveal the profound dignity of a child of God, not just be an object for visual consumption. The deeper meaning he was getting at is that true modesty begins internally, right in the heart. It flows from recognizing your own inherent worth. When you truly know your worth, you don't need to use your external appearance to constantly earn love or attention. He taught his followers that guarding the purity of your heart and the purity of your body are, in his exact words, the two wings which shall raise us to God. And, among all of his intense personal disciplines and mystical sufferings, he offered this incredible, gentle comfort to everyday people. He said, "Pray and hope. Do not get upset. Anxiety serves no purpose. God is merciful and will hear your prayer." Hearing that from a man who personally endured public bans, physical stigmata, and just extreme daily exhaustion, his advice to us is simply to let go of our anxiety. Which leaves us with this final thought. In our modern society, a world that is practically entirely obsessed with screens, external validation, and instant comfort, what can we truly learn from a man who achieved a lasting global impact through radical inner focus, secrecy, and profound physical sacrifice? Padre Pio's life kind of challenges everything we think we know about power and influence. Think on that for a bit, and let it spark your own curiosity to dig a little deeper. Thanks for joining me for this explainer.